And welcome to part two for those of you who are listening to the podcast. This is where part two is going to begin with Schofield coming back to consciousness after being... I'm still not 100% sure where he was shot. I feel like his helmet might have been shot. Either his helmet or... I don't think the back of his head could have been shot. I just think that his helmet was shot and the impact of that shot knocked him down the steps and his head hit either a rock or a brick or something and caused it to bleed. And so here Schofield is looking at his watch, and unfortunately his watch is broken, so he can't tell what time it is. He doesn't even know if it's the same day or if he's woken up 2 days later, which makes the audience wonder too whether if he's still going to be able to deliver this message in time to save the soldiers, the 1,600 men, and obviously Blake's brother. And here we become disconnected from Schofield, which is rare, but I love this scene too, where the camera slowly moves through the broken window. And this is an example of a wide shot that establishes geography, so we get a sense of where we're at. So now we're in Akust. And now we've reconnected with Schofield. And those are a bunch of flares that are lighting the set. And I thought that was so creative that they decided to use flares to light the set. And of course the big burning church, which is going to show up a little bit later. But it emphasizes the fact that Schofield has no idea where he's going. He doesn't know where to run. It also adds a sense of eeriness to the shot too, because this town is abandoned. It's been destroyed, basically, by the Germans. And I also love the attention to details when it comes to the casting of the shadows, which the cinematographer and the production designer said that they really thought about when building this set and lighting the set. And if you see right there in the background, that circus poster, the director, Sam Mendes, said that was an homage to his grandmother, who I believe was married to his grandfather, who the film is dedicated to. And I think she grew up in a circus family, or she was a part of the circus, or something like that. So that was an homage to his grandmother, which I love that he added that to the film. Here he is loading his gun, because he has no idea. He already encountered one sniper. We don't know whether he's going to encounter another one. And he's already been shot at again, so there are definitely German soldiers on foot who have noticed him. Which, how in this world would they have realized that he's a British soldier? In the dark. I don't understand. Here comes another one of my favorite scenes. This is the burning church in Akust, and if you look towards the left, you can see a fountain, and the fountain almost looks like a crucifix or a cross. And then we slowly focus on the shadow of a man, what looks like a shadow of a man or a soldier in the background. And Schofield is wondering, is this guy good or bad? But now we realize, no, he's not. He's shooting at me. I've got to run. Which was something kind of unexpected. I was actually thinking that when I first watched this, I was like, maybe he's a friend. Maybe he's not a German soldier. But obviously he is. And Schofield here, he takes a risk and he goes down this chute, I guess you would call it, into a basement. And now he has to figure out where he's at. He has to kind of lay low because a soldier did almost just shoot him. So he sees the bed, so he knows, and there's a fire. So he knows that someone has to be there. And then we encounter this young French woman. And you can kind of see here the back of Schofield's head. He is definitely wounded. And it's a bad wound too. There's a lot of blood on the back of his head. And you know he has to be exhausted at this point too. I mean, he's almost been buried alive. He's had all that rubble crash down on him. He has to be sore. He's also had the hand injury and now the head injury, and the head injury has to be the worst one. And again, the camera here is moving around Schofield, which adds to the sense of him struggling to communicate with this French woman. And again, he's checking his head, and I think he's realizing that it is a bad wound. And poor thing, he's probably about to faint. And you can just feel his pain. George Mackay, again, is a brilliant actor because you can sense and you can actually feel the pain, almost feel the pain that he is going through just by watching his reaction to her moving his head to the side and carefully touching his wound, trying to figure out where it is. Yeah, right there. It's so subtle, but you can feel his pain. You can sense that he is hurting in this moment. And now these two characters have kind of made a little bond. They've connected with one another right here, even though they don't speak the same language. And now we hear the cry of a little baby, and Schofield realizes that he and the young woman aren't the only ones in the basement. And he recognizes that the baby is a girl, which again pays homage to the fact that Schofield has two daughters back at home. And so, of course, looking at this little baby girl, he's thinking of his two daughters who he's left back at home. I think some of that was the food that he got from the German trench. And this is where the milk comes back. This is the reason why the milk was so significant. Was because it was going to be given to the little girl right here. And that question right there again makes us wonder, makes the audience wonder, especially an audience who hasn't seen this film before, makes them wonder whether if he does have children. And kind of emphasizes the idea that he does have children. And the milk was, the whole story with the milk was actually based off of a first-person account. A soldier actually did go through something similar to this. He found milk, but then he also found a young woman and a baby who needed milk, and so he gave the milk to them. He's so gentle with the little baby. And here we hear the clock chiming, symbolizing that it's morning. And Schofield here is again refocusing on the task that he's been given and the promise that he's made to Blake. You know Schofield wanted to stay. But nope, he refocuses, gets right back on task. And there's the burning church again. And the church, the burning church, is what's illuminating the scene that's about to take place here. They're no longer using the flares anymore to light the scene. Oh man, and then there's a German, I think, officer. Or just a random German soldier who's throwing up. And Schofield comes around and tries to find another way out of that situation. But he comes into contact with this younger German who's just as equally frightened as Schofield is at this moment. They're both terrified. And Schofield here, he gives the German soldier an option. And the option is, if you don't speak, I won't speak, and we can both just move along. But no, he speaks. And now they kind of have to fight to the death. And it also makes you remember when Blake gave that German soldier an opportunity to live. But the German soldier didn't take it. And neither did this one. Yeah, that German soldier is definitely drunk. Oh, I love this part of the musical score. Get out of my way. I think this might be my favorite song. Oh man, there's a soldier in front of him, and I think there's a soldier behind him. You can sense that. So he has to go down this way. And that was a cut right there. That was a cut. But it all blends so well together. You cannot tell that it's a cut when you're first watching it. It's only if you look very closely and you think about it that you realize it's a cut. And Schofield makes it. And now he has to survive these rapids. These river rapids. Which the French woman told him he should follow the river and then he'll find the forest. Where the Devons are supposed to be stationed. Oh man, he was desperately trying to grab onto that branch right there. I really wonder how they were able to capture this scene on camera. Was the camera on some sort of line or wire hanging over the rapids? Was someone actually in the river? Or was it a drone? I didn't fully understand that when watching the behind the scenes or listening to the director's commentary. Maybe I should go back and check. And that had to hurt. He bumps into this boulder. He also loses his big, I don't know what it's called, like a backpack or something, his one of his layers of clothing that had all the pockets in it. He loses that. And you can tell he's lost it in that shot right there where he falls down the waterfall. And this was, again, another blended cut. And so the rapids was a different location than this was. This was a river. A different river where this scene in particular was shot. And at this point, Schofield is really about to give up. You can see that he's just absolutely exhausted. And he almost passes out from exhaustion. Right here, where he goes under the water. But he comes back up because he can't breathe underwater. And that kind of wakes him up. But he's still, I think, questioning in this moment whether if he should just give up. Because again, he doesn't know if it's the same day, if he's too late. But then we see these petals, and the petals remind Schofield of Blake. It's almost as if Blake's spirit is imbued in these petals. And that makes Schofield keep going. It makes him want to keep going. It makes him want to swim to shore and seek out the Devons. And this is something that I didn't realize watching the film for the first time. I thought that these bloated bodies floating in the river, I thought that these were soldiers' bodies, but in the director's commentary, Sam Mendes says that they were actually the civilians from the town of Akust. This was the result of the German destruction from the town of Akust. and that there are both men and women floating in the river. And this is just so traumatizing for Schofield to go through, that he has to climb over all of these dead bodies in order to get to shore. All of these innocent civilians who died as a result of this war. And Schofield at this point just loses it. He finally finds a moment to lose it. He needs to let all of his emotions out. And he's still trying to process everything he's just gone through. I mean, he almost just died. Who knows how many times. And Blake has died. He's still, again, trying to process that. But after losing it, he finds a way to refocus when he hears a voice singing in the distance. And so he gets back up. And he makes his way through the forest. He realizes that just by sheer luck, he's made it to the forest that the French woman was talking about, that he should follow the river and then he'd find the forest. He's just by sheer luck made it to that forest. It was Blake who was the one that was good at maps. That was mentioned earlier on, not Schofield, so really just the fact that he made it to the coast is a miracle. The fact that those soldiers who were on a mission to go to the front line were just passing by and he could catch a ride. I think there's a hidden cut somewhere in here too. I'm not 100% sure where. I think it might have been when he passed by a tree, or maybe it's right here. And you can kind of see in the far off distance the heads of a few of the soldiers who are sitting down listening to the soldier who's singing a song. Oh. And I also love the imagery of Schofield leaning against the trees, almost as if he's looking for support and guidance and strength from nature, if that makes any sense. I just love that image. It's almost as if the trees also help him to reset and refocus, and regain his strength. Because in the first scene, if you remember, he was leaning against a tree and sleeping. And this is a beautiful song that was, I think, adds a really nice touch to the film and what these soldiers were truly going through, especially these soldiers, since they're all thinking that they're about to go into a battle where they're going to potentially and quite possibly die. It's a song that's all about going back to either your dead mother or your dead father, and going to heaven. And the camera, again, just disconnected from Schofield, and it's traveling through these soldiers who are, in fact, the Devons, which we learn a little later on. But we finally get a visual of the faces of these soldiers, the men who are about to walk into a trap. And I feel like Schofield at this point has just lost consciousness. He's so exhausted at this point. He doesn't even react to the soldiers getting up. That's how you can tell how weary he is. And it's the soldiers who don't recognize who he is who kind of revive him. Because he's saying to find the Devons, I have to find the Devons. And they say, hey, well, we're the Devons. And he slowly comes back to life again and realizes that he has made it in time. And we as an audience, along with Schofield, finally understand that we still have time to deliver this message, that Schofield still has time to deliver this message in order to stop the attack, that the attack hasn't begun yet, but it is about to begin. And you just get the sense right here where Schofield stops and looks. You just think that all of these men are walking into a trap. He knows that they're all walking into a trap. And these are different trenches. These are actually, I think they're called chalk trenches. And Schofield doesn't know these trenches. He's never been in them before, I'm sure. So he's completely lost, and he's just trying to find someone who can direct him towards Mackenzie. And we start to wonder whether if he's actually going to be able to deliver this message in time, because that man just there didn't believe him. Oh, and I love this shot right here. He's made it to the front line. And now he has to find Colonel Mackenzie. Oh, and this captain. He's going through something I think called I can't remember what it's called, shell shock. But he is not helpful in any way at all to Schofield. And right there, I think you see in the background, he just got probably obliterated. And Schofield's like, whoa, that just happened, but I still have to keep going. He just presses forward, no matter what. And that explosion right there, I'm pretty sure that knocked the camera guy too. I think the director talked about that and how dangerous it was to shoot this, because rubble was really falling down. These were all practical effects. The cameramen were also being showered by rubble. And this man right here, he actually plays Harry Potter in the stage play. Fun fact. The adult Harry Potter. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And here's the poster scene. Oh. And here is my favorite scene of the entire film. He knows exactly what he has to do in order to deliver this message, and that's walk up and out of the trenches. And right here in this moment, he's like, what am I doing? Because he's just walking, but now he's realizing I have to run. I have to get this message to Colonel Mackenzie. And that right there, where he runs into a soldier, that was not meant to happen on the day of shooting, when they were shooting this. And then he runs into another one again, and he just gets back up, and he keeps running. That was not meant to happen. That just so happened to happen while they were shooting. And George talked about this in an interview, and how he and the director, Sam, talked about, no matter what happens, you do not stop until we say cut. And so the fact that made it into the film, it just adds so much to the scene. And it really, truly, I love that he gets knocked down. I love that he doesn't perfectly run through all the soldiers without getting knocked down, because it just adds a sense of, it just makes the scene seem more real. And the fact that he's meeting resistance right here. And that no one's listening to him after he's gone all of this way to deliver this message. Oh, and when that guy sends send in next wave, it gives him the courage to just run in there against all the odds. And here we meet Mackenzie. Who's a very steely, cold colonel at first glance. And it's right here where he says, the Germans have planned this, sir. That makes Mackenzie interested in reading the letter. And all of the audience is just like, what's taking you so long? Open the letter and read it right now, and just say, call off the attack. But he just takes his time with it. It keeps the audience on the edge of their seats, wondering whether he's going to say yes or no. And thankfully, he says yes. Stand them down. This is a really good line. I hoped today would be a good day. Might be a good day. And hope is a dangerous thing. Oh. The sad thing is that is so true. That there's only one way this war ends. Last man standing. That 1,600 men's lives might have been spared today, but tomorrow they might have to go right back into battle. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, he's been through so much, and for him to just say, F off. Does he not even understand what he's gone through? But then we have this really nice soldier who says, well done, lad. And so now, the final thing that Schofield has to do in order to actually complete his mission in his eyes is to find Blake's older brother, Joseph Blake. That's the last thing he has to do, and then his mission is finally complete. Delivering the message was one thing, but actually meeting Blake's older brother and making sure that he was okay was another part of the mission. That's one of the last things he promised to Blake, was that he would find his brother, who looked just like him but a little older. And here you get to see the aftermath of just a few minutes of war, and how many soldiers are already injured. Soldiers being dragged back down into the trenches. And Schofield, again in this moment, is completely lost. He has no idea where he could find his friend's brother, except for the fact that the major has told him that he might be where the casualty clearing station is. And he's still trying to figure out where that might be. And here we're going through the casualty clearing station and visually seeing the effects of war. And at this point, Schofield is very desperate. He's so desperate to the point where he's just going to shout out Lieutenant Blake's name. Because again, his mission is not complete until he sees Blake. And you can tell right here, he's struggling to keep it together. He has to find Lieutenant Blake, otherwise the mission has failed. And we as an audience can kind of sense that too. We're also on the edge of our seats, looking for Blake, wondering where he's at, wondering whether if he's dead or alive, wondering if he's one of the men who is in the tents, who's getting his leg amputated or is so injured to the point where he can't even communicate with someone. And Schofield hears Blake's brother's voice, and here he's found him. Just his facial expression, you can already tell that he understands, just by that pause that Schofield has in that conversation, that his brother is dead. Like, that he didn't have to say it in words, he already knew. And he asks, "What's your name?" twice because he's still dealing with the shock of losing a brother. And here we learn Schofield's name, and that is Will, or William. And that's another thing I love about this movie, is that we don't learn everything at the very beginning of the film. We sort of gradually learn a little bit every take, or not every take, every few minutes about these characters. In every experience, we learn a little bit more about these characters. Always telling funny stories. And I love that he says always telling funny stories, because I think that line was necessary so that Blake would really understand that that's my brother, He's talking about my brother. I know that he was with him. And there's the handshake. The film starts with Dean Charles Chapman, or who plays Blake, picking Schofield up with a handshake grab, if that makes any sense, almost like a handshake. And then it ends in a different circumstance, but still with Schofield shaking hands with Blake, but it's Blake's older brother. And I love this ending, this beautiful ending to this beautifully stunning film. And again, the most important scenes, I firmly believe, in a film are the first scene and the last scene, because they have the most impact on the audience. I think the first and the last scene are the scenes that the audience will remember the most. And here is where the audience understands that Schofield does have 2 daughters, and that he does have a wife, and that they are his everything. They are what he is fighting for. And we end the film with Schofield looking off into the distance, and then he closes his eyes, and I believe while he closes his eyes he's thinking about his family, and that's all he's thinking about. And it ends where the film began. And here we understand that this film was dedicated to Lance Corporal Alfred H. Mendez, who fought in the 1st Battalion King's Royal Rifle Corps, and he told the stories that inspired this film, that were the inspiration behind this film. And one of the points of that was that even though many soldiers died fighting in World War I, many soldiers in fact did survive and lived to tell the stories. And so I think what the director was doing there was he was saying that Schofield did live to tell his stories, that he did love to tell this story, just as his grandfather lived to tell the stories. Here we see the music was by Thomas Newman, who did a remarkable job. George Mackay, Dean Charles Chapman. I love that the director decided to cast 2 young actors who weren't as well known as other actors that they could have cast. Richard Madden. Yes, for those of you who might remember, he played Prince Charming in the live-action adaptation of Disney's Cinderella. But I love, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I love that the director casted 2 sort of unknown actors. George Mackay and Dean Charles Chapman had been in other things previously, but nothing like this where it was a huge lead role, if that makes any sense. And I love that he paired them with this astounding, well-known British cast, like with Colin Firth and Benedict Cumberbatch, but the fact that he gave those actors smaller roles, I don't know, it just adds so much more to the film. And I really love I really love that the director did that. And that he decided to give these two unknown actors a chance to shine with the support of these more experienced actors. And so, yeah, that is the end of the film. We're at the end credits right now, listening to Thomas Newman's beautiful score. I think this is the song Through the Night Window. I've been listening to the score a lot lately, and it's so beautiful. And it really truly helps you kind of immerse yourself into the film and the emotions that these soldiers are going through. And yeah, I want to thank everyone who's stayed with me all the way to the end, who's listened to the entire podcast, both part 1 and part 2. I really do appreciate you all and your support. And as always, keep watching movies.